Welcome back, Nick Lenz's movie reviews. Continuing my countdown to Halloween. Okay. Now this is double shot, not triple shot. This is triple feature number 4. It's featured because it's movie stuff. Okay. Now, the 3 films I'm going to be talking about are Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, House of Frankenstein, and House of Dracula. Then yes, I have seen these films several times, in case some of you are wondering. First one we're talking about is Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, which is not a bad idea to talk about first because, well, in the previous episode I had talked about the Wolfman. Now, the thing with Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman is a sequel to the Wolfman. Now, the film itself is also a sequel to Ghost of Frankenstein. Yes, because that was the 4th Frankenstein film. So basically, it's a sequel to 2 movies. But here's the thing. It's the first ever versus movie ever made. This is before King Kong vs. Godzilla. There. Before King Kong vs. Godzilla, before Freddy vs. Jason, before Alien vs. Predator, and definitely before Batman v Superman, you had the Frankenstein taking on, the Frankenstein monster taking on the Wolfman. Now, the Wolfman obviously is still played by Lon Chaney Jr. That hasn't changed. It's only the 2nd time he had played the character, Lawrence Talbot. Which, from most of the films, they usually keep his storyline pretty much. There's no hiccups with him. There's minor hiccups here and there, but no really big ones. As for the monster, it's not Boris Karloff playing the monster in this movie. Now, Lon Chaney, in the previous Frankenstein appearance, had played the monster. This time, it's played by Dracula himself, Bela Lugosi. Yeah, Bela Lugosi is playing the monster in this movie. Now, there is something interesting, though, about this. Is that originally, after he had done Dracula so well, Universal basically sort of gave him an offer to play the monster. There has been a couple different stories of why he didn't play the monster. One, he turned it down because the fact the guy would have no speaking lines and the fact he'd be under a lot of makeup. Another story is the fact that James Whale, the director of the original Frankenstein film, wanted Boris Karloff instead. And, well, Bela Lugosi had basically regretted not playing the monster back in 1931, so he got a chance to play him. Exactly 13 years after he had turned down the role. The film itself, it's a bit of continuity hiccups here and there. One big continuity hiccup is that in the original Wolfman film, the one released in 1941, which, excuse me, this film came out 3 years after the Wolfman, even though it's set 4 years later. But something is really bizarre about what time frame this film's set in, because with the Wolfman there was cars. In this film there's horse and buggy. They can never keep this consistent when it comes to the films, like what time period is it set in. Now, in case you're wondering, when do they fight? They don't fight toward the very end of the movie. They usually are very calm. And I was mistaken thinking that Lon Chaney Jr. was the one who started the whole Frankenstein put his arms out like this. Yeah, it was actually not him. It was Bela Lugosi who did that. My mistake. I'm correcting the mistake right now. Now, the film pretty much picks up definitely at 4 years after the Wolfman. And you're like, okay, you watch the Wolfman and then you watch this movie. But I would also recommend, before you watch this movie, watch the previous 4 Frankenstein films, because it's kind of a minor tie-in here and there. But apparently, the continuity for this film is a bit all over the place, in a way. Now, apparently, at the end of Ghost of Frankenstein, basically, Frankenstein was not the monster was not in Frankenstein's castle. He was in Dr. Ludwig Frankenstein's house, which burned down. Now, they had mentioned that the castle had suffered a fire, which that is a continuity flub itself. Now, as for which Frankenstein was involved, it's completely questionable up the air. Yeah, it's a bit bizarre itself, but... And the town itself, well, this is done in the next film, I'll get to that in a minute, but seeing this film, seeing Bela Lugosi playing the monster, now, whenever he's fighting, he has to have a stunt double because, from what I've heard, the guy was 60 at the time he did this film. I'm not kidding, he was 60. So that would probably mean that at the time he did the original Dracula film, the guy was in his late 30s. Which, if you look up, if you watch Bela Lugosi very closely, he looks like he has some wrinkles on him. Yes. Alright? Now, the film itself, it's actually a really good film. And I do recommend it to watch. The monster brawl basically is done really well. But there is something else I should mention. They bring back actors who were in The Wolfman. Aside from Lon Chaney Jr., they bring back the girl who plays love interest. Of course, Bela Lugosi, definitely. They also brought back the inspector, the guy who played the inspector. Now, here's the thing about the guy who played the inspector. The guy has been in several Universal films, always playing some kind of cop. So much here for him. But if you watch these films, back to back, like, is this the same character? I'm kind of like, no, it's just actively different parts. But it gets really out of control when they really... Now, this actor, the guy who plays the inspector, this guy at this point had been appearing for about 3 films. 4 if you include The Wolfman. He does appear also in the follow-up film as well. But come on. It's like, Universal, can you stop recasting the same guy to play the same type of character over and over again? Yeah, it's a bit bizarre to say the least. But the monster fight is really good. It's really well done for a 1940s budget. And this film it's really done really well. And yeah. So now the castle itself. Now in the follow-up film they do reference this film a little bit, but overall it's a good film, and I give the film a 9.5 out of 10. It's a good film to watch. It's a bit of continuity hiccups. That's the only reason I point off. All right, next is House of Frankenstein. This one is really good for these 3 Monster Mash movies, because here's something interesting though. Boris Karloff himself comes back to the Frankenstein film series. Not as the monster though. This time he comes back as a scientist who apparently his brother was a former assistant to Dr. Frankenstein himself. As for which one, is it Carl? Is it what the other? Is it the Hunchback from the first film? Completely unknown. Now, I should also bring up that the guy who plays Daniel, he does team up with Lon Chaney Jr. again. Now, Lon Chaney Jr. is definitely back in this film, but they do team with each other again in quite possibly one of the worst horror films ever made, Dracula vs. Frankenstein. I personally have never seen it, but I've heard it's really bad. Yeah. And just by sheer coincidence, this film ended 2 guys' careers. It ended the guy who played Daniel, and basically was also the last film appearance for Lon Chaney Jr. Just by sheer coincidence. Now, from what I've heard for his makeup, now it's not mentioned if he had a problem with the face makeup or the face or the hands, but apparently he had a problem with the boots. Basically the feet, when his feet are hairy, those are actually boots. Yeah, and from what I've read, it was very uncomfortable for him to wear. But it's a really well put together film, might say. But, oh yeah, I should also mention the Dracula's in this film as well for House of Frankenstein. Bela Lugosi. Nope. Even I'm like, what? Where's Bela Lugosi? Why is he back as Dracula? Instead we have John Carradine as Dracula. This is actually one of 2 times he actually plays Dracula. He plays him also in the follow-up film as well, which is a bit bizarre. But Dracula himself is not on screen for very long. It's like, when you watch this film, it's kind of like, yeah, the Frankenstein Wolfman stuff are in here, fine. But it's like the Dracula stuff is kind of tacked on. And the whole stuff with Dracula, I mean, Dracula himself is only on screen for maybe 20 minutes at most. I mean, and he gets defeated by being exposed to sunlight. No stake through the heart. Now, apparently, it's reference of how this guy in the Limpini, how he got the remains of Dracula. Apparently, he started from his castle, which is wrong for the continuity of the films, because he was in England and it was Carpathian Abbey. And he basically was killed in a novel. So basically what they did is they kind of merged what happened to him in the Dracula film and the novel into one. That's my theory of what the explanation, how he got the remains of Dracula. Now pretty much Dracula in this film is just a tool. That's all he is. And yeah, I mean, John Carradine does a really good job playing Dracula, but he's no Bela Lugosi. He's very suave, a little bit manipulative, and pretty much the whole thing is just written off. But he's very good in this film. And then when they go to the town Frankenstein, yeah, also the guy who plays Radcliffe, Rainfield, I think his name is. He's in this film as well. He's in several films, several Universal films. First couple times he's kind of crazy, but this one he's perfectly sane. Though he blows up a dam in this film, which destroys Frankenstein's castle. Yeah. Now of how, actually I think it happened in Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. Yeah, I believe it was Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. Now something really bizarre happens. They do something really weird with the monster. Now, the monster in this movie, one of 3 times he plays the character, Glenn Strange plays the monster. He also plays in the Fallout movie and the time when they took on Alba Costello. Yep. So, it's actually, it's a pretty decent movie. So, there's a bit of a love triangle between the Wolfman, Daniel, and the Gypsy girl who gets caught up. She kind of feels a bit tacked on a bit, but she's not annoying that much. But yeah, she first Larry Talbot, guy who basically barely shows any emotion. Yeah, because he's big and strong. And apparently, this doctor who Boris Karloff plays, apparently he wants to play brain swap, like putting people's brains here, brains there. It's bizarre. The brain stuff is just nothing. But pretty much by the end of the film, they have all the characters die. Well, Dracula himself already died. Frankenstein and I don't remember the mad scientist's name that Boris Karloff plays. Apparently, they get trapped in quicksand and they die. The Wolfman gets shot with a silver bullet by the Gypsy girl. But overall, great movie. It feels, I'm going to give this film a 10 out of 10. It's a really good film. Despite its mild, actually I'm going to give this film a 9 out of 10. Despite its continuity hiccups, it's still a great film. Just adjusting my belt. That's really all I'm doing right now, in case some of you are wondering why am I reaching down here. Alright, now the last one I'm going to talk about is House of Dracula. Which, this was the first one I did see of these films. I saw this film before I saw House of Frankenstein and before I saw Dracula. This was the first one I saw. And once again in the film, John Carradine, I almost forgot to mention this. The Frankenstein, throughout most of House of Frankenstein, does nothing. He just lays on a table pretty much almost the entire movie. He's lying on the table. As for why, I don't know. Maybe Glenn Strange basically felt like lying down. Yeah. And pretty much he does the same thing in this film too. When he does show up, he's like, He's laying on a table the whole film. Yes. Now, oh, Neiman, that's his name, Neiman. I remember his name now. Now, they pretty much ignore Dracula and Wolfman's deaths in the previous film, but they kind of kept what happened to Neiman from the previous film. Apparently, the whole quicksand thing, they find him a little bit later on in the film. Now, basically, it's like, oh yeah, let's have a gathering of all the monsters. Now, basically, one thing a bit bizarre, though, is that they kind of give Dracula and the Wolfman a scientific explanation for how they are. And Dracula's tired of being, blood-sucking. But it's part of a plan of his to seduce a nurse. Yes. One thing I can praise about this film is the fact that he's actually on screen longer than he is in the previous film. So at least he's used a little bit more. Yeah. Trying to think, what else? He's once again defeated by sunlight. No explanation of how. Yeah, basically, if how this happens, well, he was doing the scientist who's in the movie, he performs a blood transfusion on Dracula, and then Dracula taints the blood and basically turns the doctor into a madman, and the first thing he does, turn Dracula into a skeleton. The Wolfman, they apparently give him surgery on his head, and apparently that cures him of his werewolfism. And this is kind of ignoring the follow-up film anyways. But as for the monster, now what he does is really cool. Basically, the villagers storm because apparently the doctor killed a carriage driver, and everybody's all pitchforks, torches and pitchforks. Just go up straight to the castle, and they get into the castle. And it says, "Run for your lives! It's the Frankenstein monster." And they all believe it because it's the Frankenstein monster behind him, which makes Lon Chaney Jr. a genius. He gets everybody out of there, and this is something a bit bizarre though. Apparently, James Hart pointed this out, but how the ending of this film, they pretty much use stock footage. They use pretty much how the Frankenstein monster was defeated from Ghost of Frankenstein. Okay, but I give the film a 9 out of 10. It's not perfect, but it's still a good film to watch. All right. That's it for this episode. Stay tuned for the next episode, which is a double shot, and it's going to be on the Abbott Costello, 2 of the Abbott Costello Meet Monster films. I haven't seen the other ones yet, but these 2 I've seen, and they have some hiccups with them. Okay, but until then, I will see you there. Bye.